One of the stories that I had to illustrate, which I didn't like illustrating, was that we should respect the racist. And I figured, how am I going to respect an image of that? So I turned the swastika into question marks. Question, how can we respect the racist? There was a story about stereotyping in race. And this is the image that I designed for that particular article. It's really interesting because I've used this image several times since. I don't know if you're familiar with the situation in the United States with Hurricane Katrina and what it did to people in New Orleans. Soon after that, the Associated Press and a lot of the press went in there and took lots of photographs and did something, spread the word, the news worldwide. There was an instance where there were these two photographs of two people carrying food, walking through water with food on their head and carrying their belongings on their head, both from the same press agency. One had a white kid through water, and the other one had a black kid walking through water. On the caption of the white kid walking with water on his, with food on his head, it said, somebody carrying their belongings through the flooding. With the black kid, it said, this is a looter walking with something that he looted through the water. So some things never change in some ways. Halfway through the magazine, they wanted me to divide up the magazine into separate countries to talk about race country by country. And they said, why don't you use flags or something? And I said, no, let's be more creative than that. So I devised this man-toned, melanin color imaging guide, where I took the various colors of different people and matched them to the various countries, and they could use that as a guide throughout the magazine. This was a post I designed for an exhibition last year in Venice, and the exhibition was about sexual trafficking, human trafficking and sexual trafficking. If you can't read it properly, it says, in prostitution, it's not sex that is sold, it's the power over women. The American Institute of Graphic Artists asked me to design a poster. The Boston chapter asked me to design a poster to encourage people to vote. The poster had to be non-partisan, meaning I couldn't choose sides. I couldn't say, vote one way or the other. And get the majority of people that you can to come and vote and participate in the 2004 elections. And I don't know if you're familiar with the culture of the wishbone, where you break it, and so it's the same thing in the United States, so I use that as a V, vote, empower your wishes. Last year was also the anniversary, the 60th anniversary, or should I say the commemoration of the dropping of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was asked to design a poster for an exhibition. Again, it was a fax art poster exhibition, so the poster could only be black and white, and this was what I sent along. Nuclear weapons at their end. This is a recent poster that I designed for a client in Holland that is using the ballot box. People are doing art around ballot boxes to remind people about what they're voting for. And this project is called the Art of Democracy, and this is the image that I designed for the poster. This was a poster I designed for the victims of Hurricane Katrina. Many rivers to cross, justice intolerant, unemployment, so forth, so. Environment and conservation. One of my clients in Zimbabwe is the International Union of Conservation and Nature. And I design a calendar, or I used to design a calendar for them every year. In this particular case, I use traditional artifacts. Zimbabwe is very well known for carving out of wood and out of stone. And what I used in this particular instance was I designed these things. I went across the road. I asked a local guy, can you make these things for me? He made them for me. I took photographs and I incorporated them in the design. I think that that's also very important because what you're doing is you're bringing local culture into the role of design and feeding it back to people so that they understand it within their own terms. So this is one client that always allowed me to do that. The following year, they asked me to do another calendar. I changed the format a little bit, and I made it a 4-page calendar instead of a 1-page calendar. And I kept the same principle where you try to look for things within the society and feed it back in terms of some sort of knowledge. What I did in this case was I went to shops and I bought traditional fabric. This is not a traditional fabric, but I bought traditional fabric. I went and I bought offcuts. I don't know if you know what offcuts are, little pieces that are too small to sell. And all I did is I went to about 10 shops and I just bought all these little pieces. What I was trying to look for is the idea that most people are walking around with the idea of conservation and nature on their shirts, on their dresses and everything else, and not realizing how important nature and conservation are. All I did was take those pieces of material and actually put them together. I didn't do any illustrations. That is just for material that people wear on their fabric. So this one was to do with birds. This had to do with animals. Just a montage. The same organization has annual reports, and they asked me to design an annual report cover for them. They wanted to show how our identity is linked to that of wildlife. The annual report cover finally became a poster as well because they liked this idea. But looking at our wildlife, does everybody know that there are no two zebras which have the identical stripes? They are all completely different, just like our fingerprints. And I use that to connect that our identity is linked with wildlife. The Earth Summit in Rio invited some designers to design a poster looking at a positive stance on the environment, and this was my contribution. The Earth is our mother. Last year was the 20th commemoration of the Chernobyl nuclear accident. I hope you're all familiar with what happened there. And I was asked to design a poster commemorating, or should I say, looking at the 20th year or after the nuclear accident. And I decided to make it all in Russian. I had some students help me with this, but I made 20 panels from made them look like uranium rods so that we can remember what that was about. This was a project that I embarked on a while ago, but I'm continuing this project. I find a question mark a very strong symbol because it asks us to question certain things. I started with this particular poster, and it's based on a quote by a famous writer called Bertrand Russell. And he says, in all things, it's a healthy thing now and then to put a question mark on the things that you take for granted. So this is the very first post I did with a question mark. But I want to carry that on to talk about other environmental issues, where I use the question mark and the globe. This is the next one. This is a Chinese proverb. When you drink the water, remember the source. This is something that I wrote. If a few degrees more than our body temperature makes us ill, what of the earth? We cannot solve the problems that we have created with the same thinking that created them. Albert Einstein.